morning. This is Kathleen. I'm from Good Noodle Yarn Co. I'm the owner and the dyer over here. I'd like to welcome all of you here and all of you who are going to be watching this in the future. Today we are going to be dyeing my brand new colorway called A World of Good, which I absolutely love. It's blues and greens and aquas. And when I was dyeing it, it kind of had me think about globes and the world, and how I ended up with that title. So as you can see over on the other side of the screen, I have 4 different pans going. I have each of my 4 yarn bases that I dye on. I have them in the various stages. It's a 3-layer process, this one is. So you're going to be able to see all of the different layers that I put on. And I also have a skein completed and dried, so you can see what it looks like after it's done. Although I don't have a complete project, I have a pretty close to complete project, so you'll be able to see how it works out. I'm going to go ahead and put this first layer on. I have my everyday, or my DK everyday base right here. The first layer is it's a color that I mixed myself. It's kind of a green and an aqua combination. It's probably a little bit more on the green side than the blue side, but anyway, it's very pretty. So let me show you how that goes. Now I have been soaking all of these skeins. I soaked them in water with citric acid for these 2, which are my everyday skeins. And then these 2, which have the sparkly in it, the stellina, I use vinegar for that because it doesn't dull the stellina. So I soak them beforehand in the water and their respective acids. And then I kind of pile them all up in here, just go for it with the first layer. The reason why I do this instead of like laying them flat, I find if I do this, I have a little bit more of a random disbursement of the colors. So this is that kind of bluey greeny aqua that I was telling you about. Generally speaking, my goal with the first layer is just to kind of get some color everywhere. It's not necessarily the color that's going to end up being the most prominent when we're done, but it's a good base color for the other colors to kind of play off of. And when I do each of my layers, I usually end up, kind of depending on the color, it can kind of give or take 5 minutes here and there, but I like to let the layers sit for about 15 minutes before I put the next layer on, just so that this has a chance to completely set. And then when I put the other color on, it'll still blend somewhat with that color, so you kind of get the differentiation that way, but it doesn't completely like mix and overtake with that color. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and rearrange the skeins here. This right here is my everyday sock base, which already has this first layer of the aqua that we just put on over here. So what I do when I pull the skein out is I move this zip tie, which is how I raise them in and out of the water more easily. I kind of slide that over about 1/4 of the way, so that now when it comes up like this, it's a different portion of the skein that is going in first. So again, that's just another way that I just kind of like to try and mix things up. And then when I'm setting it back down, I like to put kind of the white part that hasn't been dyed yet, have that more up towards the top. I'm dyeing over on my stovetop today, so I don't have quite as much room to be able to manipulate this, but it'll work. The second layer that I'm going to put on is a really pretty blue color. And this is probably the most dominant, or the most, I guess dominant's the word I'm looking for. It's a color that you're going to be able to see most. It's not necessarily the brightest or the most obvious if you were to put the 3 colors together side by side. It is probably the majority of the skein is going to have this kind of blue on it. Put a little bit more water in this and kind of dilute the last bit of this. So I try and leave about half, I would say, of the skein up out of the water when I'm originally putting the dye on. And then after it has just a second to set, then I go ahead and push it under the water, so that now all of the blue dye that I put on here, it has a chance to mix in with the water, and then it's going to kind of go underneath, and it's going to color a little bit of the underneath side there too. This is the last layer that I'm going to do right here. It's a really bright green aqua color. I've taken a little bit of this bright green color that I'm about to put in, and I mixed it with the aqua color to come up with this one. So I'm just pulling that that bright green color out of here, and then using that as my final layer. I kind of like to do that because then I know all of the colors are going to play nicely together. And generally speaking, on this last layer, I like to use a more kind of a brighter, or at least a more dominant color. It sets everything off at the end. If I were to put a light blue, for instance, on top of this, you wouldn't be able to see it because it would kind of blend into the blue that's already there and the blue-green that's already there. And after I put all of the layers on, I let them, and I try to have this so that it's just barely, like not even really bubbling. It's just really, really steamy. And after I have all of the layers on, I let that continue to steam for, I don't know, about 30 minutes or so. And then I turn the stovetop off and I let everything cool completely. That cooling period, I find, lets the colors really set inside of the yarn. Kind of the slow heating and then the slow cooling is what I find is really the most helpful if you're having any problems with your dye running or anything like that when you're done. To me again, this is the yarn after it's finished. Again, I'm gonna there, that looks a little bit better there. You can see the blue, that dark blue, and then over here, this is kind of that light aqua green color that we started out with, and then over, say, more on this side, this is really that right here is that dark green color that we just put on. Thanks, Amy. This is a DK sock that I have knitted up that you can see how the yarn ends up dyeing up, which I really love. This lighting isn't quite showing that green color. I find that sometimes with these really bright colors that it's kind of hard to see what the actual true color of that is, but you'll have to trust me, it's really pretty. This color right here, it's not a color of mine that I have. I just dyed up a really dark blue, and I'm using that as my heels and toes this time. And I've cut in for this heel. I still have a little bit left, and then kitchen her up, and then this will be done. And then I have the other heel on the other side. And then, like I said, let it cool down. And after it's all cool, then I rinse it. I let it soak for a little bit in cold water with a little bit of wool wash. I like Eucalan, but you can use just about anything. You can use soak. I know a lot of people use that. And that also helps with, since I had to use the vinegar with the sparkles, I find that if you just soak it in like a little bit of wool wash, it takes away that kind of, vinegary smell, which nobody really likes. Take care. Bye.